I have 6 o'clock. We will call the meeting to order. We have all board members present with the exception of Ashley. We'll get to that later in the agenda.
Rick is absent as well.
Rick too. All right. So many extra people in the room than this Rick. So we're missing Rick as well. We know, is he not?
He had a conflict.
Okay.
He thought he might be here, but he knew he'd be late if he's here at all.
All right, sounds good. Then we'll go to the approval agenda.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda.
I got a motion from Bruce.
Second.
Second from Cheryl. Is there any further discussion?
Can we just make sure that motion has with the additions?
With the additions,
Thank
correct.
you.
There are additions to the agenda, yeah, thank you. There are additions to the agenda. Everybody had a chance to look at those as well. Okay, so, no further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Carried. Public comment? Your public comment? We'll go on to the consent agenda. Matt, I'll let you kind of run with this.
Cheryl, do you want to take financial items first?
Yes, everything was pretty much business as normal. I noticed there were some bills that came in for the Innovation Center and for the coffee shop. It's going great guns from the sounds of things. Otherwise, everything was pretty much normal.
Just to follow up with that, to a couple donations, one from the West Central Chapter of the Minnesota Dark House Anglers Association, and another one from Busy Mama's Boutique uptown. As far as the personnel items are concerned, Jackie Spanier has a long-term subcontract that is filling in for a teacher on maternity leave. Sally Zumwall's assignment is for next year. She is going to be sliding to the health paraprofessional role. And then we have a resignation from Bronia Hulk and a resignation from Ashley Anderson. Oh, and then lastly, we also have the buildings and grounds assignments as well. So there are 3 components to that. We have buildings and grounds director. The recommended hire for that is Max Maher. That would be a 0.5 FTE. And we have 2 head building custodians. Recommended hires for those are Gary Schmidt and Brad Walters.
Both full-time positions.
Both of those are full-time positions, correct.
Okay.
Just one more note on that whole buildings and grounds piece. So after this reorganization of the buildings and grounds department, the district will have to post for a full-time custodian. That's what we would need to then fill out that complete reorganization would be a full-time custodian.
And that was kind of intentional as well with the new additional space anyways. That was kind of a.
Yeah, when we were talking about putting the addition on, we were kind of estimating it'd be about a 0.5 FTE. By doing this restructuring and by having our buildings and grounds position be a 0.5 rather than a 1.0, it actually is going to allow us to be able to hire a full-time general custodian is what the plan will be.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion from Bruce.
I'll second.
And a second from Maggie. Any further discussion?
What will happen to the Dean of Students position?
So Max is going to be resigning that Dean of Students position. It's going to get posted internally. And once we have an opportunity to post it internally, we will interview any of those candidates. If there's a candidate that works there, that will be what the direction would be. Otherwise, the next step would be to post it externally.
Also, is Max going to have enough time to hold those 2 positions and his coaching positions?
Oh, I sure think so. I mean, I think that's one of the things that is most interesting by having a activities director and the buildings and grounds director share that role in a full-time position. Both of those positions are going to require some level of fluidity and flexibility to them. And so I think those 2 can actually work very well together. If you're trying to have a half-time buildings and grounds person and a half-time, I don't know what the other position would be. It might be difficult if there isn't a certain level of flexibility. I think the other thing the district needs to do, obviously with this restructure, part of what is motivating the restructure is financial limitations. That is a piece to this. So I think it's something the district is gonna have to keep monitoring over the course of next school year and probably the school year after that to see how that structure works. I think it's a good place to start. I think it has the resources to be successful as is, but I don't have a crystal ball either. And so there might need to be some changes to it a year from now or 2 years from now.
Will this new position be considered administrative, the same as Donnie's position was?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see any difference with that. The Buildings and Grounds Director would be on that administrative team, just like the Activities Director already is as well. So I don't see a change with that.
So we would have a contract to negotiate and,
Well, I think what the easiest thing to do right now is to keep Max's contract as is. I think that's very doable because his current contract and the current Buildings and Grounds contract are very similar. I do think one thing that needs to be addressed with that is there probably needs to be some sort of a stipend or recognition that now, Max's position is ultimately going to be on call 365 days a year. So I think there needs to be some conversation about that. That's something that I think easily could be taken care of by the board in June, if the board wanted to, and then just keep Max on the same rotation of contract negotiations like all the other administrative positions are. And the board could continue the practice of finishing up your labor group negotiations first and then coming back and addressing those administrative contracts.
I'd like to call for the question.
At this point in time, all members, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Carried. Communication items, Matt, go back to you.
Yeah, so obviously we're getting close to the final days of the school year. And it has been a unique school year to say the least. So it is nice to be getting to the end and to the close of it. Mr. Orline and some other people are obviously working diligently to plan for commencement and everything that goes with that. So that's coming up. Right now, I think the plan is to continue that the commencement is gonna be out at the baseball stadium. And so we're gonna hope that we do have nice weather for that and the weather cooperates. Obviously, there will be a backup plan that if weather isn't gonna cooperate, then we'll be able to move inside. With the relaxing of some of the COVID-19 protocols, that's going to make things much more doable than what we were original thinking, 2.5, 3 months ago. So that's good news. The other thing, I am just in the process of trying to prepare for a transition, obviously in my position. So I just want the board to know that I'm creating essentially kind of a summary of where things are at right now. It will just be my take on the issues that are currently facing the board, but that document will be available and that will be something that I will share with whoever is going to be filling this role. So just know that that's happening, and as soon as I'm ready to hand that off and stuff, board members, you'll also have access to it as well. So my hope is that it will be more of a passing of a baton than anything else, and we'll be able to streamline that process as efficiently as possible. The other thing I just want to let the board know, so we just, Miranda, correct me if I'm wrong, open enrollment for health insurance, is it completed or are we in final submission stages?
So we have a couple of forms,
Okay.
and then Health Partners is gonna open up the portal like June 1st.
Got it. So, Health Partners is gonna continue to be our health insurance provider. We are, I am extremely thrilled to see the level of participation that we're getting from employees now with our health insurance. And I know that health insurance is an investment, but it's one of those things that school districts and businesses, anybody who has a group that you're looking to get out into the insurance market, we need everybody to participate so that we have a good participation rate and stuff. This spring has been really good for seeing some members, some employees that traditionally haven't participated now are joining our group and So I'm really excited to see what our participation numbers are gonna be. And I think that's really gonna put us in a good position to have a good claims experience, which ultimately will hopefully keep those renewal increases down as well. So we are closing up open enrollment for health insurance soon. Questions at all for me?
Committee organizational reports. Do we have any reports from active committees right now? Do we have much?
Did we, I can't remember our facilities, was that, but we'll be
Facility
talking about
committee
that.
met, but we're gonna talk more about it, yeah.
Old business, strategic plan information.
So just as far as our
For student
strategic,
rep.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we gotta get that on that. Student rep, sorry. This is your last, one of your last chances to shine, right?
It is. Prom was fun. Prom was really fun. I think everyone had a good time. We had a good turnout. Tomorrow the NHS is going to the elementary school to do a track and field day. So we'll be over there for 8 hours. And then just getting ready for graduation. Yeah, ceremony.
If I may add, the German trip was just postponed again, so it'll probably be next summer.
All right. Now we go to strategic plan.
All right, there's not a lot of changes as far as our tracking tool. I can tell you that we are finalizing our literacy camp that we're gonna have for educators in August. It should be extremely engaging. We will have some of our own trainers doing letters training for literacy skills for teachers in grades K through 8. And then we are also having Dr. Kim Gibbons from the University of Minnesota's Carey Institute. She is actually gonna come out and do a day in August as well and talk about not only multi-tiered supports and different strategies, but really the nuts and bolts of literacy skills and the science behind teaching reading. So it should be, I think, very interesting and should be something that would be of great value. Depending on what our capacity is and where we end up with Paynesville participants, we are also going to be offering the University of Minnesota component to colleagues at the West Central Ed District as well. So Sauk Center, Melrose, Albany they will all get communication from us to see if they want to send anybody to come and join us on that day, so.
Can you share a little, the trainings that are offered, those are voluntary or who, like, how does that work for?
Yeah, so the nice thing about our teachers' professional development program here is all teachers have 2 flexible PD days that the district has simply just turned over to them. So most of our teachers are right now in the process of developing their professional development plan for next school year. So as this gets rolled out here in the next week or so, many of our educators are going to just simply pencil in those 2 August days as the days to fulfill their flexible PD. Obviously, teachers in grades 9 through 12 won't be using those. They may be looking for some other alternatives. But a lot of our K-8 teachers are using their flexible PD days for that.
Any questions on the strategic plan? Any discussion anybody else have? Or Matt? No, on the new business. Tax abatement proposal.
All right, so obviously Logan is here from Lewis Industries. He was ready. He has about 35 minutes of material that he'd like you to listen to. He was there.
6:30 is when it starts.
So I will give you a summary. You can certainly ask Logan any questions. So Lewis Industry is looking to do an expansion. Part of their expansion, they are estimating that they would be bringing in an additional 10 full-time positions at the minimum. Hopefully, potentially, it could be more. They are looking for the school district to abate taxes associated with the school district portion only for that addition in order to help finance that project. If you remember back, I want to say, oh boy, was it October of 2020? We did a TIF application, a tax increment financing application. So this is very similar in that both of them are tools in which a local government agency can allow taxes to be abated. Because this isn't a TIF application, this is a straight tax abatement. What the board would have to do is you will need to schedule a public hearing. That hearing is scheduled at least 10 days, but no more than 30 days out. So I would suggest, if the board wants to consider this, my recommendation would be you should. I would suggest we should schedule that hearing for 6 PM on Tuesday, June 22nd. That would be the first thing we would do at our regular business meeting in June. We can hold this official hearing. The rough tax impact that we're talking about for this application is about $66,000. And I'm looking at Logan just to verify that, but I believe that that was the number.
Pretty close to that.
Spread out over 9 years is what they're asking for the school district to abate. Put that into terms of, what does that mean educationally for Paynesville area schools? When we have a student enroll in our district, and we collect all of our state aid, all of our federal dollars, everything that's associated with a student, right now, that comes out to about $11,000 for a student at Paynesville area schools. So let's just say these 10 new positions that Lewis Industries is looking at adding, if one of those positions brings one student over the course of a 13-year academic career with us, that's gonna net us about $140,000. So I would suggest that this would be an application that the board would potentially support. But we can't do anything with that tonight. The only thing that the board can do tonight is schedule that hearing if that's the direction the board wants to go with it.
Do we have to advertise this?
Well, we will advertise it, by having this meeting here tonight and doing this motion and second and approval, it'll be in our minutes. And then MSBA is actually going to be getting back to me on exactly what our notification expectations are with it. But I just know the hearing can't be scheduled in the next 10 days, but it's got to be scheduled in that window between 10 and 30. So June 22nd fits into that window by statute.
I think we should schedule that meeting. These are very interesting. We don't have any money from them today. After their time period, we have all the taxes coming in from that. At the same time, we have the potential of growth of employment, which is huge for a community like ours. It's a nice way to make these things work. And it's certainly not the first time it's been used.
Absolutely.
Lots of companies out there have used it.
So we're looking for a motion to.
I will make that
schedule
motion.
Motion from Cheryl. And that's to schedule the public hearing on June 22nd at 6 PM right here in the boardroom secondary.
I'll second it.
Got a second from Bruce. Is there any further discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Carried. School Executive Connect.
Thank you, Logan.
You guys have the floor.
Thank you. We're delighted to be back with you and particularly delighted to be with you without a mask on. It feels so nice now. And to present, review with you what we've found in terms of the input we received from the individual interviews and focus groups we did, the online survey as well, and then talk about the profile that we're recommending to you for your next superintendent of schools is based on all this input. And we had great sessions, certainly with all of you and with Matt and your two principals and your union head. I think there were 11 individual interviews and then 5 focus groups with your administrators and teachers and support staff. And great group of students and a great group of community members. That was an outstanding group that you put together. I think there were 13 individuals, and I think it would be fair to say a group of community leaders, I think would probably be the best definition. And they were great to talk with in that virtual session. So one of the things that you've got the document, and I trust you've had a chance to look through it, and so you get a sense of where groups are at. And as you probably noticed in going through it, one of the things we look for in districts when we do this is how consistent are the responses? you like to see, frankly, consistency between each of the focus groups in terms of what they see for the goals, for the strengths, for the challenges, and so on. And there was a lot of consistency, and that's good. I mean, even, you know, that every district have issues, but if different groups see different issues, that's troubling, you know, for obvious reasons, and that's not where you're at. So that's great. And the goals, you know, things that stood out on the goals, everyone, I think essentially every one of you and the board and administrators, teachers, students, community, all spoke so highly of the initiatives with the personalized student-centered learning and the desire to keep that going and keep building on that as one of your goals for the next 3+ years. And another one that came up consistently was to continue with strong fiscal management and you know, really, and obviously something that critically important to do. And finally, just about every group, including the community, talked about the need for an operating levy and desire to see that move forward. The strengths that came across from essentially every group also were supportive community. So many comments about how the community supports education, the relationship between the school district and the community, and the different opportunities that exist that have been established in partnerships with businesses and so on for student opportunity. The Paynesville Area Community Foundation and support that they've brought, you know, which is fantastic. I mean, I don't think I've been involved in a search in a district where, at least of this size, where you have that kind of support from.
It's one of the highest percents of community support I've seen.
Yeah, it's something to be very proud of, and for good reason. And great staff who care about students and work hard, you know, go the extra mile, kind of a lot of those comments. Excellent students, that was commented on many times, and how they are focused on education to a high degree and support each other a lot. We heard that a lot, which was great to hear. People are proud of the fact that you are an innovative and progressive school district. That came up a lot, and you don't hear that necessarily a lot of places. Effective use of instructional technology, your new facilities was mentioned time and time again, and just great things about the community in terms of it's just a great place to live, great area, a great location in the state, and close to so many different things. Great amenities that exist here in the community and outdoor opportunities that exist and so on. Very consistent strengths. The challenges that when we looked through it that really stood out for us, the one that was mentioned most often was resistance to change, particularly on the part of staff, and that's not unusual at all. In fact, that's real common, sort of built into our human DNA, I think, to have difficulty with doing something different and new, and this is the way we've always done it. You know, can be pretty powerful at times. One thing that I will say that was interesting to us and is a little different here is that there seemed to be, from the comments we received from various people, a little higher resistance at the elementary level to change than at the secondary level in terms of staff. That is unusual. That is different. Almost invariably, it's the other way around. So for whatever reason, you stand out in that as a difference. Funding, you know, lack of funding driven by, you know, some declining enrollment, some uncertainty with the COVID year and what that brings, state and federal funding, that came up a lot. And then the other challenge that came up a lot was obviously an opportunity, but the challenge of passing a levy, you know, with, on the heels of a bond issue a couple of years ago and so on. But one would think that given how strongly people feel about the district, that that, you know, they've got a pretty good chance of being successful with that. As far as the attributes of the next superintendent to start in July, excellent communication skills, that came out from, you know, board, administration, teachers, community, as it well should. It's pretty darn hard to fill the role if you aren't a really, really good communicator. That includes not just, you know, being the face and voice of the district, but the listening component, and, you know, that is so critical, and to make people feel valued and so on, and engaged through excellent communication. Strong fiscal management skills and just management skills in general. Certainly the superintendent in your district has to fill that role. And so nothing gets a district in trouble quicker than having difficulties in that area. So somebody who can come in and really be on top of that, as you have been, is very, very important. A lot of expression about the valuing of the team approach that the district has adopted with an administrative team approach. And people expressing how they want to lose that. And so somebody who can bring that approach and that leadership style is going to be very important. Very visible, and not only visible and engaged in the district, obviously, in their schools, but in the community. Somebody who people know and are engaged with, and is a community leader as well as a school leader. An instructional leader who is visionary, innovative, strategic thinker, that came out a lot as well. Someone who empowers others, delegates well, and, you know, holds people accountable, but, you know, can empower people through delegation. Collaborative approach. You've got a lot of good things going within the community in terms of collaborative efforts, as well as with neighboring districts and so on. So that's something you want to build on, and somebody who has the ability to do that. Approachable, and a lot of people mentioned a person who can be comfortable, and that's, you know, that's something we need to vet for. Some people, you know, want to come in and sort of take, you know, put their stamp on everything, and there's nothing wrong. You've got to be comfortable, but you don't want to take a step back before you step forward. And so someone who can appreciate all the good things you have going and can just get, you know, enmeshed in those and keep it going forward, and not have to try to rebuild things that don't need to be rebuilt. So those are the things that stood out for us in terms of the focus group feedback. Any questions about that at all? Well, the other input that we utilized, you know, that help us in getting a pulse of the district and also putting the profile together, is the online survey. And you had 108 individuals who took the opportunity to fill it out. If you had a chance to take a look at that, you noticed that a really high percentage of them were community members. 73% current parent or have a student in the past 5 years, and then 19%, the next highest level, community members who don't have kids in school right now or within the past 5 years. 92%. Now these add up to more than 100, 118 actually, because you're supposed to pick, you know, if there were two that applied to you, you pick them both. But I don't know about you, David, I haven't seen a survey where those two community groups added up to over 90%. I haven't seen one.
But it also echoes the feelings from what you just talked about with the strong community support. So this also supports that feeling, and
On the flip,
very healthy thing to have.
yeah, on the flip side of that, 14% from licensed staff is low. And you know, who knows why? It could be the time of year. It's a really busy time of year for teaching staff, for all staff, and to wrap things up and so on. And at the end of it, it's been a pretty crazy year too. So that's a little low, but, you know, and that's part of why the community one percentage-wise, you know, is higher too, undoubtedly. So in terms of the goals for the district, again, there's a lot of, you know, there's forced choice here, so that doesn't come out exactly wording and such like came from the focus groups, but still a lot of consistency. You know, really, you know, the focus on curriculum and instruction and student success. You know, almost half the respondents picked strengthening the academic programs and curriculum and continuing to do that. And then maintaining programs for all achievement levels. So student success academically really was strong. And actually the 21st century curriculum is just, you know, all fits in that same area. Managing fiscal resources prudently. I somewhat arbitrarily picked 20% and above for most of these. You know, 1 out of 5 people picked it, made it to this summary list. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, but Miranda has a hard copy of the entire feedback from the survey. All the open-ended responses, all the suggested questions for interviews. She's going to copy that and get it to each of you, so you get to see that. But these were the top choices, if you will, and it was kind of break on most of them, below 20%, so we just picked above 20 or above. Managing fiscal resources, engaging students in best instructional practice, and ensuring student well-being, emotionally safe and confident, and you know, student mental health concerns, and particularly now, you know, this is something every district, you know, is focused on right now a lot. And you know, people who chose to do the survey, you know, see that need. The strength, again, really aligned with the focus groups, the strong community pride in school, promoting innovations and learning, supported community, effective use of technology, dedicated and highly competent staff, supportive and involved parents, all right in line with the focus groups. Class size, nice to see class size come up under this one. It usually comes up under the next one, so you can feel good about that too. That's great to see. The next one was interesting. Typically, when we put a summary together for on the survey, we can kind of use that same bar, you know, like a 20% bar I mentioned. We've used that same bar on the challenges. We wouldn't have any. They were really spread out, you know, more than normal, and that was a little different. But they were really close. I mean, 15 to 18%. Really tight in terms of what people feel, but you see the things that are listed there all came up as things that are a bit of a challenge. We did hear from a few focus groups and individuals, the fine arts programs, as a feeling that you know, we got great co-curriculars, but there was certainly an element of folks who would love to see some stronger programs or emphasis in the area of the arts. The challenging state-of-the-art curriculum came up, you know, competition with you know, I don't need, you know, can see understanding and supporting diversity in the district. That came up here. It didn't come up too much, although we did have some individuals talk about it. You're not a very diverse district, you know, ethnically. So, because in a lot of districts now, clientele has changed so much, that is a really high, you know, area in our goals and other, but it's understandable where, I think the challenge you have, and some people mentioned this, is while you don't have a lot of diversity in the district, not all your students are going to spend the rest of their lives in Paynesville area, and so trying to find ways to prepare them for that away from here, you know, it is, and that's tougher, you know, it makes it tougher when you don't have a lot of this here, so. And the achievement, high quality, I think those, I was focused on the elementary, you know, people feeling pretty darn good about the secondary in terms of facility, but some issues at the elementary, so. And finally, the attributes that came out on the survey, building that great team was the top choice, which is interesting because almost all those people were not staff members, they were community members, and so they see that and really support that. The instructional leader, the school finance and business side, really again in line with the focus groups, inspiring vision, visible in the schools and community, approachable, collaborative consensus builder, holds others accountable, excellent communication skills. A lot of correlation again with the input from the focus group. So, any questions about that? Well, then that brings us to the profile itself, the 2-page document that David and I sent you, and this is, you know, what we are recommending in terms of what we think the next superintendent should bring to be a good match for you and be successful. Now, admittedly, there's not a candidate out there that possesses all these attributes to the highest degree. You know, that person doesn't exist. And but you don't want anybody who just can't function in any of these areas. That is really important to be competent, you know. And these are, I don't want you to get hung up on number 1, number 2, number 3, but they are kind of prioritized. In other words, when we look at what your needs are, you know, they're all important, but the ones that as you move down the list, you know, if you can, you want somebody really strong in those top ones for sure, because it's going to be so critical to their success here. And the rest of them, while not unimportant, maybe aren't quite as critical, because the other things can fill in the void there and make up for that. The communication skills, critical to have that. And a variety of communication styles, you know, using technology, speaking, writing, obviously the listening skills. The management skills and school finance, that again, you know, came out strongly from you and everybody else as something that's critical. That supportive team builder, not losing that team approach and continuing with and building upon that. And creating an environment that is trusting and safe for expression of ideas and opinions, and you know, that's really important, obviously. That visionary instructional leader, again, you've done some great things instructionally recently, and you want to keep that going. You want to build upon that. You're someone who sees the value of things you are focusing so much on, like current tech ed and personalized student-centered learning and so on, and to keep building on that. That visible and creative leader in the school, or active leader, excuse me, in the schools and community who's really engaged and creates those connections with all the things the superintendent has to connect, all the groups the superintendent has to connect with, be it staff, parents, business. In your case, certainly the foundation and all the other entities that exist here that can be helpful in building support for the school district. The working relationship that a superintendent has with a board is, as you know, it's really critical. And if that doesn't happen, things don't go well. So, you know, you know that. And so somebody who can build the kind of relationship with you collectively and individually that really is positive, fosters great communication, no surprises, all that kind of thing. And somebody who, you know, understands the roles that the superintendent has and that the board has in terms of administrative and governance roles, and I think you've done a good job of that here, and you want to keep that going. Somebody who motivates others, has high expectations, delegates, like we talked about, has great follow-through and holds others accountable for their role. Collaborative, something again that came up so often, who will lead that implementation of your vision and strategic plan, and empowers others, in the process. Putting students first is, that came up a lot as well. And, you're in the wrong business if you don't do that in terms of decision-making and so on. So that's something that, we always look for as well. And as well as looking out for students in terms of their academic and along with academic, the social, economic, and mental health issues that so many kids face. While didn't come out highly on your in terms of concerns, I think that it's still important to have someone who understands the value, understands that the students in the Paynesville area schools are they're living in a very diverse world, even though Paynesville isn't necessarily very diverse. And so anything that can be done to create experiences that are helpful, be they curricular, be they other opportunities to prepare students for life in a very diverse world. Certainly, pretty hard now to do the job without being. So you don't have to be a technology expert, but you certainly have to be supportive of using technology to enhance instruction and communication and so on. And finally, the arts. Someone who values and supports all the co-curricular activities, be they clubs, athletics and fine arts, supports those activities that build student involvement and supports in a lot of ways, including showing up. It's pretty darn important for the superintendent to express their support by being there at a lot of those events. So that's our recommended profile, and we would love any comments you have about it. And this is the one thing that we do think would be good for you to act on to make it official. And this would guide Dave and myself in terms of our vetting of candidates and looking for all these to the highest degree we can.
Well, like I said, anybody have any questions for Bob and David regarding the profile, how everything was put together?
I think it was very comprehensive. It embodied I didn't see anything left out based off of what the feedback in the survey was. It was really helpful to see that information. It's great, I think, just information for our district to have, to look on to see here's where we're at as we set goals. Our strategic plan, I think those are things we can look to and have kind of a measure of where we are. My question is, we'll use this tool for evaluation of the candidates and assessment. And my question is, how do you envision us to do that? So because they are desired, they're not requirements per se, how do we go through, and maybe we'll have more training on this, that we're not leaning into our bias, they answer that question really well versus they can do the job and they're meeting a wide variety of these desired, attributes versus they just said something really great and they spoke to what we wanted to hear. So I guess I'm just trying to how do we really make sure that we're assessing this holistic? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yes, it does, absolutely. And there's certainly Dave and I are going to do our darndest to do that with each of the candidates. So if they don't fit these pretty well, we are going to bring them, right? And but having said that, you want to be listening for that as well. And so I think in forming questions to ask candidates, questions that don't allow them just to say what they believe, but to force them to talk about what they have done that reflects that belief. And so, you know, are they gonna be physically engaged in the community? Well, are they now? You know, what are they a part of now? I mean, things like that force them to give examples of how they have, you know, been innovative in instructional leadership, or how they built a team, or how, things that pull out examples. And by the way, we will, we have, oh gosh, I don't know. 45 is it?
Yeah.
You know, questions that are a starting point for you. We will soon, in just the next, you know, 3, 4, 5 days or whatever, we'll send that to Miranda and have her get it out to each of you. And you can't ask 45 questions or whatever, but you can ask 15. And you don't have to pick questions off that list. You can, you know, you can come up with others too. You know, that's just fine. But it's a starting point. They're categorized by different roles of the superintendency that the superintendent has. So it's always good to have at least 1 or 2 out of each of the categories of questions that hit those categories.
That's related to the profile.
Yeah, and so we'll get that to you. And those questions, a lot of them anyway, attempt to do that, to force people to, you know, talk about what they've done.
I think, Bob, what we'll want them to do is to send our top 12
Right, yeah.
back to Miranda.
You just kind of note the top dozen or so that you think are really important and then get them back to Miranda, and then we kind of, that really expedites things, you know, on the 15th when we have to finalize the questions. In fact, might even almost be finalized before the meeting, depending on, you know, what, but that works really well. And instead of just starting from scratch that night and.
Yeah, the first question is going to be, tell us about yourself. The last question will be, why you for the job? And then in between there, you have room for about 12 to 14 other questions, maybe about 2 per person.
Yeah.
So you would go through that list of 45, and that's honed down from about 150. So you're getting the shorter version, which is better for you. And take a look at those and send your top 12 back to Miranda. She'll keep a little tally. And then the top questions that come back rated will be the questions you'll use for the semi-final, for the first round of interviews.
And you mentioned adopting it, you know, is this something we need to formally adopt as a board to make a motion, or is this something that we can mutually agree on that this is a good profile and this is what we want to use as a board moving forward?
Yeah, most boards adopt it, you know, adopt the profile. Some just they run with it, fine, don't officially adopt it, but, and it's, works either way, but the majority adopt it, which I think is probably a good idea.
I'll make a motion, we adopt the profile. How's that help?
Yep, I'll take the motion from Bruce to adopt the presented profile for the new superintendent search. And a second from Maggie. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried.
Okay, well, thank you, and,
Miranda should post that tomorrow.
yeah, you can put that up on a website, I think is a good idea. And also, if you want to put that summary of those 108 people who did the survey can kind of get a sense of, you know,
On the summary of
the website. So that's another thing that isn't a bad thing to post on your website.
And then you guys have, we're gonna talk about the scale.
Yeah, well, in a second.
Yeah.
You got more, right?
Yeah, want to do that
Yeah,
first?
we're getting ready for a couple of things here in June, as interviewing the semi-finalists. And then that will move into interviewing the finalists. On one side of the sheet is, I think we're gonna make it, Miranda, I'll come back and get you.
You can have this one.
You get one?
I have one
Okay.
on my computer.
There you go. If you look at the first page, that's the one that we're gonna use on June 16 and 18. That's from the semifinals. And we'll be interviewing between 5 and 6 candidates at that point. And that's a structured interview situation. You're gonna ask the same 14 questions for all candidates. And at the end of that session, on the 18th, we'll run you through a process to help you determine who are gonna be your finalists. And then, if you flip the page over, you'll see just a sample of what the finalist schedule would look like. That's a full day invitation for the candidate to come to the community. And Amanda, you see your name on here once. I don't know if you're even gonna be with us at that point, and if you're scheduled, okay, good. Sometimes it's helpful for the outgoing superintendent to kind of be the tour guide. Another thing that the board could entertain would be to have a board member or two accompany that tour. And what it does, it gets you kind of up close and personal for about an hour and a half with the candidate to try and determine if there's something there that's gonna match the profile. And then after that tour, is it 90 minutes? Is that good enough for kind of a windshield tour and get out and walk and look in the buildings or whatever too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
All right, and then you can see there's about a 50-minute session with each of the 5 focus groups. You have students, you have administrators, support staff, teachers, and parents community. And that's about a 50-minute, they develop the questions for that. Each group does. It's a little more freewheeling. We'll give them a little training. We'll send something out to them about it's inappropriate to ask these kinds of questions. So we'll provide that. But other than that, the questions are up to the people there. And they'll sometimes meet in advance and coordinate and organize themselves. And they'll come up with 25 questions they're going to ask in 50 minutes. And that's tough. Too many. So they got to slice it down a little bit. And then when it comes to the parents and community, we would entertain the idea of the board coming to that session and just observing. You're not to ask questions. Your time comes after dinner. But you just come and see how does the candidate interact with the public and the parents. And then.
So is that all of the board members?
Pardon me?
All of what? So then we have to announce that as a,
Yeah, you'd post
post it
that.
as a meeting.
Yep.
We're already gonna be,
Together, I think
we're already gonna be posting the dates, we'll just have to post the times, because we're gonna be all together for the
Yeah.
later interviews, so
Right.
we would just make sure the time
Is this
is,
time on there?
yep, is appropriately.
Yeah, and then the board's got to decide if they want to have a dinner with the candidate prior to the interview. Now, there's, 50-50 on that one. If you're sitting close to the candidate at dinner, you're probably going to entertain each other a little bit. The other 5 might not be able to get close. So sometimes the dinner with the board is a little overrated, but it's commonly done too.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you how commonly done it is. I've probably done 65 searches now, and every single one's I did it with a board, so it's pretty common.
All right.
And Dave's right. Hopefully by the middle of June, we won't have to be quite as, we could be closer.
Yeah.
And then we always make sure, because Dave and I will be there, at least one of us for sure, maybe both, on those final rounds. And we always get out, get to the end of the table, hoping to get as many board members in proximity to the candidate as possible. It's not a time to interview anybody. It's just a time to have dinner, make small talk, whatever. But it gives you a sense of the candidate in a little different environment. And so, this is totally up to you, and there's pros and cons, but some boards will invite the spouse or significant other to attend that dinner as well, and that's totally up to you. And you don't have to decide tonight, but it's something you can think about. It's up to you.
At 7:00, how long does that generally take?
Your final interview?
Yeah.
About an hour.
Yeah.
So you have about an hour there. Have you ever had lunch on the go? Like, we would start interview at, say, 5:45, and we eat at the same time we're having an interview. It takes all the issue away of one person nestling in with the superintendent. At the same time, nowadays, there's lots of meetings that are held and you just kind of do it on the go.
Well,
My only concern with doing that within an interview situation, my only concern would be, is it too casual at that point in time and you're not able to get into the hard hitting professional question as somebody's eating a cheeseburger? Or, you know what I mean, like it kind of takes away that ability for, in my opinion, at an interview to, now, a group lunch meeting like that, yeah, we can all have one lunch meeting if we wanted to and still get a lot of work done as our group. Because but it's a little more casual than actually.
and the other thing, Bruce, that I'd be a little bit concerned about, not that the candidate's gonna be relaxed at dinner with you because they're on high all day, but at least they'll be able to eat.
Right.
And if they're being interviewed at a dinner, they won't, there's no way they're gonna be able to eat. And so I'd be a little concerned about that,
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just curious, because you have an hour for dinner, and if, depending on how you're set up, you have to be careful that doesn't go into an interview anyway.
Yeah.
It's just kind of
And
a,
we pay attention
different
to that
position
too.
to-
We'll be
We
there.
haven't had to jump in, and people have kept it casual, talking about.
The weather.
And then frankly, you don't want to ask questions that are not legal to ask, but there's no question that this, in the course of conversation, the candidate's going to talk about some things that you might enjoy hearing about, but you can't ask, talking about their kid that's in college or whatever it might be, it's, there's some value to that, I think.
so like, where would we have this?
That varies from district to district. Some districts will do it at a local restaurant, especially if they have a private room. But more and more districts now are doing it in-house. You won't have your lunch service going someplace, some just cater to their own, food service operation. Or have somebody in the community cater something in. If you do that, that works kind of nice in that it doesn't take the time to go. It's pretty hard to do the hour, frankly, if you go someplace else. But the hour is no problem. In fact, you could probably do it in 45 minutes if you cater in and do something like that. That works well. And we used to, majority would go to dinner somewhere else and we'd end up leaving early to be there to tell people, oh, they're coming this late, because they would know. It just takes a lot of time. Doing it in-house works pretty well, works real well.
His opinions on
Some
that.
more of these rolling desks?
You guys,
This is kind of a nice format.
yeah, you guys could definitely do something in-house. Miranda and I can figure out how we would get somebody to cater in and stuff, that if that's what you guys want to do,
Yes.
we will just have figured
I
out.
think I'd just soon, do something here, whether in this room or a similar sized room that we can have.
I think the layout of where we have it is important, so everybody can hear as best they can.
Yep.
If you lay it out so that all of a sudden we're sitting in different places, then
Yep. I would like to suggest, at least if we do it in a separate room from where we're actually interviewing, so we don't have to worry about the food cleanup. We can walk out of that room and just go right into the interview and have some assistance on the
but you
cleanup.
see what I'm saying? The kind of this layout is a very comfortable layout for everybody to eat. It kind of opens it up. If there's a discussion going on, everybody's kind of in on it. If we get there, just in a restaurant alone, you're gonna have groups of tables here and there, and everybody's not together, or you got the scraping long table and somebody's way the heck out, and you miss everything.
We may actually have some better spaces just in this building to be able to do something like that
Okay,
we can certainly figure that out.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's nice to relocate to the official interview room and say, okay,
Right.
let's wrap her up, folks. We got 8 minutes. We need to be down the hall.
Yep.
We'll do that. We're kind of posting on the side here. We're both interviews, the semi-finalists and the finals. There's at least one of us here to kind of keep pushing and keep things,
And what Dave put together here for the final round, there's certainly a really good schedule, but it's not cast in stone. If it works better to have, having the community at the end of the day almost, but because teachers are usually at the end of the day before, but they're not gonna be in session, so it could be really, whatever works, whatever works, best.
Yeah, if Matt and Miranda want to take a look at this, as long as this framework seems to fit and gives you an idea conceptually how the day would progress.
I think the framework is fine.
Yeah, but like you said, if the teachers group would rather go first in the morning and students would rather go in the afternoon, they could flip flop those two groups.
No problem.
I think from the community members
Yeah.
through the rest of the evening has to kind of work that way, but the rest of the day.
So then, as we talked about before, at the end of each of those interviews, each individual will fill out a feedback form that speaks to how they feel about the candidate, how they think the candidate fits the profile, and the profile will be on the back of that feedback form so they can refer to it. And how do they think they'll work with the various constituent groups? Do they have any questions or concerns they want to share with you regarding the candidate? And then we'll keep having Miranda or whoever does it copy those throughout the course of the day. So when you come to that community meeting at late afternoon, you'll get a 3-ring binder with all those feedback forms. So there's nothing wrong with looking through those while you're listening to the community interview and getting a sense of how the candidate thinks on their feet and kind of climb what they set up in the room and answer questions articulately and so on.
So can I just ask about that community interview?
Yeah.
Is that typically an interview that's in like an auditorium and community members? Can
Yeah,
and-
auditorium, cafeteria.
So would that be a situation where the board would actually view those interviews from this room? And we could have the camera on in the auditorium and.
Could do it either way, I guess, but typically the board just kind of sits in the back or
Got it.
whatever the setup is.
Okay, all right.
And we will, when we introduce a session, we'll mention the fact the board's here, but they're just here to observe and so people understand what the deal is.
And we briefed the candidates on that too, so this
Oh, yeah.
is all open book for candidates, and we're real upfront. We want them to do well too, we're.
And with the final interview questions, we have the ability to change those questions. They do not have to be the same. So if we are
Correct.
hearing a common theme, we as a board can then decide we actually maybe want to flip out a question
Yeah.
based
You can-
off of the
yep.
information that we've gotten from.
Yeah, now when you get that list of 45, you're gonna find some that you're not gonna have room to ask for the semis, but you just hang on to that and bring it to the final.
And you invariably, board members end up asking questions off of those feedback forms.
Right, that's what I figured.
People will suggest a question or a topic, and that happens a lot, which is great.
So for now, for board members, that 4:45 to, 7 is really what we need to block off. When will we?
4:45 to 5
To
to 9.
Right.
9 o'clock, because even after the candidate leaves, we might have some further discussion, so.
Not so much the first 2 nights, assuming we have 3 finalists, but definitely the third night.
So getting to our future meetings, I'm going to put, or Miranda or one of us is gonna put in for June 21st, 2021. That'll start at 4:45 PM. June 23rd, we'll start at 4:45 PM, and June 24th, we'll start at 4:45 PM.
And then if you,
And there's flexibility in what happens before 4:45. It's just, that's when we're gonna be advertising that the board's gonna be,
Correct, present.
Together.
yes.
Yep.
Okay,
And then we'll have the meetings for the June 16th and 18th. Those will have to post as well, right?
right,
Those
the
times,
16th.
Yeah, those are open, people can observe.
correct.
And then you had mentioned potentially having a board member with the district tour. Do we decide that now or wait if that needs to get on people's calendars? Or is it a preference that
But
tour
that's
is
just a thought, you can decide what you wanna do.
There's no reason
one on?
to do it.
But sometimes they find it kind of interesting.
Let's bring that up to discussion on our next meeting.
The next meeting?
Yeah, because that won't be, they'll have to act on it, just be a discussion point.
Okay.
Somebody can volunteer, or a couple of people can volunteer.
Yeah, we just wanted to frame the 2 days to give you an idea what it potentially is gonna look like.
And then the last thing is, you wrote earlier, Tom, and that is, we do want to be able to share with candidates a salary range, because we don't want any surprises there, if we're looking at a candidate who is making X and you're at Y and Y is considerably higher, you know, we know it's not gonna be an issue, but often that's not the case. And so we don't want anybody to be a candidate for you if they are not going to be able to make the move for that, you know, for that amount. And so that's the last thing you want, is you decide you like to hire them and it ain't gonna work, you know, so we don't want that to happen. So whatever your range is, we just make sure they understand it. And as we talked before, I think it's wise to bring them in as high as you can possibly be comfortable with, because once they're here, you can't give them big bumps. You know, no matter how long they stay. Now, Matt say 3 years, well, you know, that's not, but boy, if somebody starts staying, somebody says 5 or 10 or, they're gonna be falling behind every year, because invariably, a new superintendent comes in higher than the one who left. I mean, invariably, that's just the way the world's working right now. You know, I mean, that's been true for a long time. My successor in Wayzata came in significantly higher than where I was at, and probably same thing for you, Dave.
on merit there.
Good one.
So I guess when we worked on his, we had survey forms from all over and we did it pretty much in advance. But there's a lot of things that superintendent contract with the health insurance programs and all that kind of stuff. You guys maybe can inform us as to how we handle that. Matt in his contract has handled things a little bit different. Doesn't mean that it's going to be a duplicate of his by any means. And we need to know where people are at. I mean, I don't know that our salary range personally can include a school that's sitting with 2,000 to 5,000 people or 5,000 students. That could be a different category. Does that make sense?
As far as your current superintendent's contract is concerned, we did, you know, Dave and I got a copy of that. And we went through it, and it's real typical. It's very, very.
So it was somewhat close to what you.
Oh, yeah, it's very typical. I mean, you've got the number of vacation days you have is probably almost exactly average. The paying the health insurance is almost without exception part of the superintendent's contract. Your match, your TSA match, very, very normal. Pretty much everything. I mean, it would be a contract that for a district like Paynesville schools, people would, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I mean, it fits, and it's nothing frankly in there that you'd say, well, wow, this is something that most contracts don't have. There's nothing in there like that. But by the same token, there's nothing that's not in there that you'd say, wow, man, that's a problem for that not to be in there.
Well, we had summarized all over the place, but I'm gonna go back to something you said that we all need to be really well aware of. But in the management structure of superintendents, one thing that was very apparent to me last time is when you talk about where they go after they start, that is really tough, because then they balance themselves with everybody they're managing. And it is a very tough position.
Well, yeah.
So the idea of trying to bring somebody in really cheap to try them out for the first year, you can throw that out of the window, because it ain't gonna, or excuse me, proper English, right? It isn't gonna work. We need to be equitable.
That initial salary of a new superintendent, it might cause some waves, but it's gonna cause waves no matter what it is. I mean, it really is. But once that person is in place, those increases every year thereafter are gonna be modest. Because every bargaining unit you have is looking at that. And if you try to bump up the superintendent beyond what they could possibly expect, it just creates issues. You can't do it. So that's why it's so important to bring them in at an appropriate, real competitive spot, because they're not going anywhere quick from there.
So we talked about the benefits. Where are we at on the rest of it? We in the ballpark?
Yeah, benefits, yes, absolutely.
So let's get the salary part. Are we in the ballpark?
Well,
Or has this
what's your
changed a
ballpark?
lot?
Yeah.
Depends on the ballpark.
Well, you're asking us for a range.
Okay.
Or is this gonna be a private discussion? that you'll-
I can, what I can do is, and I have informed the board that I would give them some comparisons.
Okay,
I'm in the process of gathering those. I'm still waiting for.
Okay, I got it.
I'll get that to you. But I think once you get that, I think it's gonna be very clear on paper as
Okay,
to
all right.
what they're talking about.
Yeah, we're okay with that, and Tom and I had a
absolutely.
discussion on it yesterday or today.
Yeah, yesterday, yeah.
Yesterday, of what something might want to be considered.
I think what we discussed will be pretty close, but once we get that as
Yeah.
a full board and kind of give that thumbs up and
Just
we can
let us know.
move to that.
We'll
Yeah,
figure
just
something-
send us you know, always do with candidates, say, we're waiting for it, and once we get it, we'll share it with you, so. Yeah, we're fine with that, thanks, man.
Okay, well, now the quiet time is for you, not quiet for Dave and I. We've got 10 apps so far, and talked to another person yesterday for a long time.
And I met with two today.
Yeah, two today, so we've got, other feelers out and so on, and so, yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions for gentlemen? No?
Can I just summarize so that we do this right in
Yes.
the district office? Wednesday, board meeting is gonna be posted for 2:00.
Yep.
Friday, June 18th is gonna be posted for 2:00.
Well, don't hesitate to get a hold of me.
June 21, 23, and 24 is gonna be posted for 4:45.
Correct.
Okay.
You get the 15th when you met?
I did not get the 15th. What's the 15th? Miranda, do you already have the 15th?
Yeah, I have it on the calendar.
We're gonna present the slate.
6 PM.
Six,
We have that one already slated.
Is that 6
it's not a
o'clock?
regular one, but
I didn't have a time down, but I assume it's 6.
6 PM.
6.
I got 6 PM on my,
Yep.
Okay,
good.
Okay, yeah.
well, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Don't hesitate to get a hold of us if any questions or comes up or anything that you think we should be aware of.
Certainly.
Miranda, we'll get logistical things to you about little
Can you
stuff.
email me that schedule, just because I didn't get a hard copy as well?
Of the what?
The schedule you guys just were talking
You
about?
want this one?
Yeah.
Thomas, if it's agreeable with you, questions I have, I'm gonna just funnel them through you.
Yep.
So we stay coordinated, and I guess I'd suggest that for the rest of the board to
Correct.
kind of stay coordinated.
If anybody's got questions, feel free, send them along to me and I will funnel them on to Bob and David.
Does that make sense?
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Some of them on the calendar already.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
some of
but
them,
just
just
the
make sure that we get the time
times being
factor.
adjusted.
Yep,
Yep,
so,
okay.
all right. Well,
Thank
with
you very
that,
much.
yes, thank you guys.
Thank you, see you on the 15th.
Yes. Item C, shared business manager contract.
So enclosed are the shared business manager contract, same arrangements as we have had the last 2 school years would be in this contract for the 21-22 and the 22-23 school year. This contract is built into the preliminary budget that Carrie and I are working on. It would be my recommendation to approve the contract. I think the shared business management services have worked out very well.
Looking for a motion to approve the shared business contract. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
I got a second from Bruce. Is there any further discussion?
I was just wondering, is the salary comparable with what's been in the past, or?
Yeah, the thing that is happening with this, in this contract, we are doing a 60-40 split with BBE. We're picking up 60%, they're picking up 40%. It's based on student enrollment. I think that's fine and appropriate when you look at size of budgets and what she's processing and stuff. It probably is accurate anyway. The other thing that the board should recognize with this is Realistically, I do think our business manager is gonna be looking at retiring at the end of the 2022-23 school year. And I actually think there would probably be some opportunity for Paynesville to bring that person back in a part-time capacity or something. So just keep that as a possibility as well. I think that might be of interest to the district in the future.
No further discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Elementary school indoor quality project.
All right, so the facility committee met on May 11th and picked up with the indoor air quality project as far as at the elementary school. This is part of the handout that is at your places. And facility committee members, by all means, you can add to this conversation too. So on this document that's in front of you, project 1 is the current edition, so we're really focusing on project 2. Right now, originally, the expected cost that I was working with was 1.8 million. You can see in the update, May 25th of 2021, after meeting with SiteLogic, they feel a really good project budget is $1,850,000. And so the scope of that would include addressing the indoor air quality issues at the elementary school. It would remove all of the classroom unit ventilators that are in all classrooms at the elementary school and would replace them with vertical unit ventilators. And then it would also have CO2 sensors on it. And in addition, everything would be electronically digitally controlled. So everything would be tied into one system that would be essentially computer controlled. We have these stimulus funds. I originally was thinking about 1.15 million of stimulus funds. I backed off that just a little bit just to be conservative and put in here as an estimate $1 million. There is a chance that that could actually be 1.15, but I just wanted to play a little bit conservative with that. And so what that would mean is we would have to come up with $850,000 of financing in some capacity in order to complete the project. So that's what the other pages of this handout are. So there's really two options. And in talking with Ellers, the first option is going to be, it's actually the second one on this update, the long-term facility maintenance indoor air quality, $850,000. And if you go to the last page of the document, that would be where the district would bond. And we would bond using the health and safety language that's associated with long-term facility maintenance for large projects over $100,000. Districts have the ability to bond. In order for us to gain the $850,000 in revenue that we need to fund the project, we would actually have to issue about $900,000 in bond in order to net out $850,000 for the project after fees are paid. We would agree to a 10-year payback. And so obviously there would be 10 debt service levies that the district would have as a life cycle. So when we look at our levy certification process, if the board bonded in this manner for 10 levy certifications, you would have this principal and interest payment. So the way this is structured, you can see what the estimated annual tax impact would be on these properties based on how Ellers went and structured the debt repayment. Average home right now is gonna fall somewhere in that just under that 200,000 number, you know, so you're looking at not necessarily a significant tax impact. The interesting thing, or when it comes to the district finances, this obviously is the one that is most finance friendly, because this $900,000 is actually new revenue that the district is bringing in order to pay the principal and interest and to be able to fund the project. So it's not taking existing revenue sources that are already in our budget and reallocating them. So this estimate here gives the district the most financial flexibility. Okay, so that would be option one.
With very minimal, like dollars of tax impact.
Very minimal tax impact, correct, yes. Funding tool number two is the first page of this document. And this is now, again, you can look at the top and the bond issue is 900,000, so it's still staying the same. It's roughly 900,000 in issuing of bond in order to have $850,000 of revenue for the project. What we could do here is we are actually taking our long-term facility maintenance dollars that right now we're collecting on an annual basis, and we are setting aside 28.1% of that revenue annually, which comes to right around $100,000, just a little bit more than $100,000. We take in, by state statute and the way that LTFM is funded, we have roughly about $390,000 of LTFM revenue annually. What this tool is this tool is allowing us to use our LTFM revenue as collateral to go and issue bonds, and then we just have to agree, we are gonna set aside a principal and interest payment based on this schedule in LTFM for the next 10 years in order to pay this bond back. So this tool, this does take dollars that are currently in our budget, so it's revenue in our existing budget that we then have to allocate to make this principal and interest payment. Because it's already revenue we're collecting, it's already part of our local tax levy, there is zero tax impact on this. Nobody would see a tax increase. And actually, when you take this LTFM money and you go to the bond market for a portion of it, our ag properties would actually see a very small, if you look at the other tax impact, they would probably see that exact same thing, but in a tax reduction. Because then you have that school to ag credit that kicks in the minute you go and access the bond market. So they would see a very small reduction with this tool. So what's in front of you tonight is you don't have to choose a finance tool. What the facility committee would like to do, what I would support with that recommendation is we would like to approve the professional service agreement with SiteLogic so they can finish design on the indoor air quality project at the elementary school. Their calendar kind of would be if the board would approve this tonight, they would get going on final design with the idea that they would be ready to go and have documents ready to actually get out to contractors for bid in October. And then in October, that's really when you would have to ultimately choose a funding tool. Now, do you have to wait till October to choose a funding mechanism? You don't. You could do that at any point. But right now, tonight, what's in front of you is really just this approving of this professional service agreement with SiteLogic in order to complete the final design of the indoor air quality project at the elementary school. Questions on any of that?
I have a whole series of them.
Sure, yep.
So the community center, it says 15.6 million. Is that where we're gonna end up at? So where would the extra go to?
Well, the extra would go down with project 3.
Okay, so that, what you have as bond proceeds would go into project.
Correct, yeah.
So then, if we do project 3, does the federal stimulus disappear in project 3? That's there in project 2?
So,
See, you have federal stimulus of $1 million?
yep,
If I get to project 3, I don't see the federal stimulus.
yeah, there's nothing in project 3 that qualifies for using that stimulus.
So is it possible to take that 400 and offset the amount of effect on the long-term facility maintenance? So that would be 450.
Yes,
And $1 million stimulus from the federal government, and then long-term facility being 450.
yes,
The only reason I ask about that is long-term facility maintenance, I think has to do with roofs, if I recall. And we're kind of in good shape on roofs, but that seems just to be a regular.
yeah, roofs are one component, Yeah, there's a whole,
It's in general,
Yes.
that's,
Right, I know that it's in general, but roofs are kind of a lion's share sometimes of
could be, yes.
lots of those, and we're kind of in good shape right now. But,
I mean, it's just a cycle. I mean, by the time we get to the end of getting to our last segment of roof that we have to recondition, we're ready to go start on the one that we started 15 years ago. I mean, we're just,
that's exactly what it is.
it's a cycle is what it is.
And if you did the 850, it wouldn't mess up that cycle. That's what you're telling me.
No, and that's really, you know, in my talking with Ellers, the conversation we had is, I told them I really don't want to see the district have to commit principal and interest to the tune of more than 30% of our annual revenue.
Wasn't there an issue too, if we took that bond proceed and reduced that long-term, the interest rate goes up or something went up and changes, we don't quite get the same rates?
So the other thing that's going on is there's a certain threshold, and Ellers will walk us through this more than anything. There's a certain threshold that once you lower your dollar amount to a point, and I don't know exactly what that dollar amount is, but there isn't really the value in going out in the bond market anymore. You're better actually just proceeding maybe to a bank to do a note on it. You can still get the ag to school credit if you go either way. It's just typically when you don't access the bond market and you just go to a private lender for a 10-year note, you typically pay a little bit more in interest. However, right now, interest rates are so ideal,
But I don't know that you'd get it at the regular lender, 2%. Isn't that average interest rate 2% on these bond issue you're talking about? A regular lender, we're probably looking at 3 to 4, maybe.
I think it's gonna be higher than 2. I don't necessarily know exactly how much higher, but it's gonna be higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
My only thought was that there was a lot of stuff where we talked about lots of desires at that other school based upon getting this in place first, getting the boilers fixed over there, getting the electrical panels. It would seem like that 400, if that's the number, should maybe be applied over there.
And I don't disagree with that, Bruce.
First time around.
Yep, I don't disagree with that. I think the one thing that the district is gonna run into is if the district really does want to do project 1, 2, and 3, the part in project 3 that we don't have a way to fund is the structures associated with the softball complex. We can't use long-term facility maintenance for that because you can't do new construction with long-term facility maintenance dollars. So it really gets tricky to figure out how you put all the pieces together to make part 3 work in all of this if you remove the $400,000 of bond money. But I completely agree
So
with.
without the 400, we don't have funding for the ballpark.
We don't have funding for the structure.
Structure. We can still flip the fields
Yep.
and we can still do an upgrade to the softball. But yeah, when you get to putting a press box or doing the concessions and bathroom building, it gets really tricky because those you can't touch LTFM with. So that's what kind of it gets to be kind of a tight squeeze when it comes to that.
We asked the same question, because that was the same kind of thought process, and it came down to what projects could be funded by which dollars, and kind of putting the puzzle pieces together.
And what funding mechanism do we reap the best interest rates and that level of things? And again, I think what we're also talking about today is we're not looking at making that decision of how we're funding. We're just making the decision, are we going to be capable of funding this? And if so, we want Tight Logic to move forward with their planning, because if we don't get them moving forward with their planning, every month we delay that is another month we're gonna delay on getting bids, which is, farther out of what we could potentially get for bids, so.
So what is Site Logic's? So this is the project that you're approving.
No,
Are we improving Site Logic's work part of it? So if that's 250,000 of this, is that what we're really approving? I don't have a problem with that, but I'm interested in bidding it in the fall, because from some of your occupations know that
Yeah, and
it's kind of in a rotten time to be bidding.
yeah, and so this is really what what SiteLogic's professional service agreement is the agreement we're gonna enter in with them to do final design and take it to be able to get ready to go to bid in October. If the project goes through and the district bids it and funds it and completes it, there's no charges for this final design process. If we engage SiteLogic and they go through the final design process and then we go to bid and we decide we don't want to do the project, then the terms of the agreement are gonna go and we're gonna have to settle up with SiteLogic for their design work on a project that ultimately we decided we're not gonna go through with.
So it's similar to their first
It's like-
contract on project one.
It's identical to the service agreement that we entered for the boilers, the
They're
addition.
still working for the best value for the taxpayer here.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'd have to think about more and on that extra money that was there.
Yep.
Can it run as two projects?
How so?
Well,
Have a $400,000 project and have $1,000,004 that we work on there. Putting in those units, can we just pay for them and not have them affect it and still be able to use the stimulus money from the federal government? What says that the project has to be 40 units? Could it be 30 units and then we use that 400 to pay for another 8? Are you following me? So the 400,
Yeah, but
we already have, pay for the other 8, but what we're going to use the stimulus money from the federal government for is maybe a 32 unit deal.
Right, but at the end of the day, aren't you still doing 40 units? Isn't the
Yeah.
project still 40 units?
You are, but you said that the federal stimulus became a problem when we used that money. So I'm saying.
No.
This is available to be utilized for indoor air quality, which is what this whole project is. So we can use that for this project. The 400 is an issue with new construction of a building. So the concessions, bathrooms, press box type new construction, that can't be used in federal stimulus money and it can't be used out of long-term facility maintenance. So having the 400,000 to be able to put towards project 3 saves us that hassle of how are we gonna fund that portion of project 3.
Yeah, so if you look at project 3, it's really those bond proceeds, and then if you turn to page 2, it's the private funding contribution on page 2 for 150,000. Those two together, that 550,000, that's really what is getting us the ability to do the structure components of the softball remodel. And then there are components of that field update and everything that they do qualify for long-term facility maintenance and we can use that. It's just the components that qualify for it aren't the entire project.
I was just trying to be really careful when we went out and asked for $1,600,000 that we used it in what we were talking about.
The 16 million.
Yeah, the girls softball park was not in that. It wasn't even mentioned in any of the other thing. A building out there wasn't even mentioned. It was about doing the best we could to. And I believe the number one thing that came back from people was boilers, and the air quality was right up in there with that. Okay, I'm just trying to be really careful of appropriate use. So somebody's not saying, oh, well, they had a little extra money on this one, so they threw it into another sports facility. And we did.
Well, and I think the reality is what is creating this conversation is this $1 million in stimulus
Right, we
funds
didn't
that
know
are
we were
now
getting
open to
that.
indoor air
That
quality.
project
Oh,
happened.
I think it's real important. I've been reading about it for quite a while and it looked like it was right up our alley to accommodate.
And that's what we've been talking about is we're gonna have to make sure that there's a lot of different funds that only can be used for certain purposes. And we as a board wanna make the best decision for our money to go the furthest with the least tax impact to reach, what we said we're gonna accomplish. And so we said, we feel that with the support of the community, utilizing funds in the smartest way with these new resources, like we didn't know we were getting these federal stimulus funds when this project happens. Like we would rather use those dollars to support something that can support. You know what I mean? Like all these projects we said are gonna happen. It just happens.
My only
more
issue is
money
shifting
came
that
in.
money. That's an uncomfortable zone for me.
But is it shifting money? We didn't know we got these federal stimulus dollars in. Like, do you think taxpayers would be upset that we used money that's coming in that we didn't know?
I hear
was
it all the
available?
time. People always are questioning how we're spending money, make sure we're using it appropriately.
Right.
But is
So
it-
we've had times where we had
Not
$50,000 extra. I don't remember what bond it was. Technically, should that have gone back to the taxpayers? This can go back to taxpayers. It doesn't always accomplish very much. They might not even see it on their budgets, but appropriate use compared to what we asked about would be the only thing. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they would be at, but we have plenty of time to think about that. I think the project, I like the project. I do have to say, I did quite a bit of research on this on my own. And when I break this down and I take psychologic out of it, I didn't realize on those units that unit mounted inside the building, we had a picture in there, and I looked it up. That's a kind of an actually impressive unit. It's just a really extremely good replacement of that. The cost, when I divide it out with just using my artificial numbers, taking some of the planning out of it, comes out to be like every other unit in cost that I looked at. So it's not like we're getting gouged. I know at the first time we looked at it, wasn't it like $55,000 a unit? We aren't at $55,000 a unit, and maybe it comes out better when we do it. So I think it's really a good idea. I like the idea of the federal stimulus. Just personally, uncomfortable zone would be shifting money. I never had anybody tell me if there's extra money to use it in a sports complex. And I
Well,
don't,
and I think tonight, what we just need to decide, I agree with you, Thomas, every month that this decision is delayed, I just think tonight the decision needs to be made, do we charge SiteLogic with, finish up this design and get this thing ready to go out to bids in October? That's really the question, and then we can keep having conversation about how are we going to finalize the finance on it, because the good thing is you have options. Either one of the two options that I presented here tonight are very doable, and they can work. So, you absolutely have options with them.
And with that, I'll look to, see if we can get a motion to approve the professional services agreement with SiteLogic to complete the final design indoor air quality project at elementary school.
So moved.
Second.
Cheryl, the motion, Jacob
so
with
I'm
the second.
gonna offer an
Any-
amendment to that motion.
Yeah,
My amendment would be, but not a $1.8 million project funding. We're authorizing them to proceed, but we're not. In the contract that I wrote, they have those prices and all that right in that long bulletin. And on the contract, I didn't see a price on the actual contract we're signing.
because
have to go to bid
there is no price. All
There's
we're
no-
doing is just asking them to go put everything together so that they can go get bids.
Yep.
So this is just a service agreement for them to, and whatever their charge is to draw up this facility to get it bid, that's what they would be charging us.
We should kind of know that too, wouldn't you think?
What?
But is it a couple $100,000 or you probably have an idea?
Well, the structure, the fee structure is in there.
I missed
I wanna
it.
say it was 11.
I was looking on the contract to see exactly what that number was on the contract. I didn't see a
Yeah.
number on the contract. And then when I looked at it, I could see the project cost. I didn't see, there were percentages.
Yeah, and so that's it is based on those percentages that they charge. Those percentages ultimately are what the SiteLogic fees are if the project goes through. What we would end up paying for would be the actual costs associated with design for this project.
That's reasonable.
As far as the actual dollar amount, SiteLogic believes if we go out for bid in October with where materials are at and labor and all of that, they believe we're gonna get bids back to complete the project that aren't gonna exceed 1.85
I'm
million.
with them.
It could come back that it's 1.6 million. It doesn't mean that it's
So the approval
absolutely.
we're making tonight is strictly for design and all the rest of that, even though there isn't a specific price on that
So
contract.
they can go to bid. I mean, we've already said as a board, we're gonna do this project. And so it's saying you have the ability to now create the design so they can bid on it. And then we still need to figure out the funding and figure out all those questions.
And we can have the funding figured out prior to bid.
Yeah, and so realistically, moving forward, then Ellers will be coming back out. And they're gonna sit down and just go through with the board pros and cons and options and ultimately prepare to be able to secure the funds that are needed to.
Based upon fixed numbers, that psychologically is going to determine for us. Okay,
So at this point in time, we have no amendment to the, or,
well, I was looking for it in the contract, I just didn't see it in the contract.
yeah.
I mean, we're kind of just assuming some of it, I didn't see it just surprised me.
Yep.
If they were coming out if all of a sudden we decide to cut the project off, are we on the hook for 225 or 250 or? I thought I'd see something like that, and I didn't see it in the contract, that was the only thing. And I apologize, I was busy all day, or I would have got to somebody so we didn't have to have this conversation
It's good.
here
It's,
necessarily.
yeah,
And I would be more nervous if I didn't know we've talked about this for my whole time on the board. We're gonna do this project, but I would be nervous if we were like dabbling our feet in, should we do this project? You know, what are we thinking? But I feel like we've committed.
Well, this
We're
company
doing
has
this
done a great job
project.
for us.
Right, they've done
And-
fabulous work, like,
Yeah.
so I feel like we're doing this project. This is getting us ready
and this
for
is the
bid.
company we're gonna go through, so.
That's
Yes,
why.
so what you're looking at, Bruce, is what potentially would be on the hook would be 9.75%. Is what you're looking at. Because the project management is not,
I'd just like to add that to the motion.
and you can, if you want, you can add not to exceed 9.75%, sure.
I'm good with that.
All right,
I'll amend the motion to include that.
all right, so we have the motion amended to not exceed 9.75%
Project costs.
project cost. And motion was Cheryl, Jake, you saw the second. No further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Building grounds job descriptions.
All right, so there are 4 job descriptions here. We will just start at the beginning with this buildings and grounds director. There are changes from the existing, essentially, I think there's a little bit of simplification to this job description. Basically, 50% of this job description would be general administration, 25% would be communications, 25% would be program. The personnel items that are in the existing buildings and grounds supervisor job description, that is actually incorporated now into the general administration. So this position would still supervise employees of the district. But I think it just streamlines the job description. Outside of that, the qualifications and those minimum qualifications, job outcomes, all of that, that is the same that is in the current existing job description.
So we're looking for a motion to approve the first reading.
Do you want me to summarize all 4 of them and then you can do?
Yeah.
Okay, the head custodians, these are new job descriptions. This current classification does not exist in the district. Essentially, this job description really does focus on working closely with the buildings and grounds director and carrying out the day-to-day operation for each of the buildings based on the direction of the board, the administrative team, and the buildings and grounds director. The critical components of this would be our head buildings and grounds must possess a boiler's license, that is critical. Both head buildings and grounds boiler's license would be applicable to either building. We are running the same boilers in both buildings, so the same license is needed to operate either one. But that would be a major component of this. This is not a supervisory position. They will obviously work in a leadership capacity with the custodians in the specific buildings, but the supervisor of all custodians remains the buildings and grounds director, not the head custodian. Okay. The maintenance custodial position. This has just a couple of more technical changes to it than anything. This is something where the buildings and grounds supervisor, that title is being changed to buildings and grounds director. Otherwise, the rest of this is pretty much exactly what is currently in the existing job description. A couple are technical changes. The current job description reference HVAC computer. There technically isn't an HVAC computer, but there's software that needs to be run on any computer to operate our HVAC equipment. So there's just been a few of those minor things in this maintenance custodial job description. And then the last one is general custodian. Again, this is mostly technical in nature. For instance, the wording on occasion, I think it's just a little clear if it says as required. There was a statement in here that was that he or she is capable of. I think that's relatively murky language that could create some argument, and so we're removing that. I think there's some more clarity pieces when it comes to the language as far as what their cleaning role is. Athletic games and other activities, I think it's just easiest just to say items for activities and events. We don't need to specify whether it's a athletic event or a arts event or an academic event. It's just simply an activity or event. So again, the general custodian, there's very few modifications to this. It really is more technical and wording in nature. So those are the four job descriptions. This would be first reading. Certainly if there are other modifications or input that the board wants to add to it, the plan from here would be to post these, and then they would come back to the board in June for second reading and approval.
All right, with that, looking for a motion to approve the first reading of the job descriptions.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion from Maggie. And I will second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Credit card addition.
So Central Minnesota Credit Union is our bank account in which we have our debit cards associated for the school account. With the business activity of Champs Cafe, it is getting to the point where it would just be easier if there was actually a debit card issued to them. So that's what this authorization is asking for. The board does need to approve it. We would then also need to provide minutes to the Central Minnesota Credit Union in order for them to issue a card. There's nothing changing in the process. The purchase process is going to remain the same. It's just, we would be able to authorize Elise Hagan the ability to use a debit card in order to complete transactions that are for the purpose of operating Champs Cafe. Nothing outside of the operations of that.
So instead of putting an order together and getting it all set and then go and find somebody that can call the credit card in, she just gets it done in one swoop.
Yes, is essentially what's going on, because right now, a lot of the vendors she's working with, they don't accept POs. And so right now, what she needs to do is go and get approved by her building principal. And then she's either coming to the district office or to the building principal to say, okay, can I use your debit card now to order this?
Yep.
And again, she's gonna go through the approval process, but once she has the approval process complete, then she can just go and get the order complete. It would be much more efficient.
So move, is that what we're waiting for?
Yep. Looking for a motion. Bruce, the introduction of the motion to authorize Elise Hagan Credit Union credit card.
I'll second.
And a second from Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. G, 808, policy 808, face covering.
All right, so obviously there is new guidance out from both MDE and MDH as of, I believe it was last Thursday. The face coverings in school are now limited to the instructional day. So for the purpose of Paynesville area schools, we are defining our instructional day from 7:45 in the morning until 3:10 in the afternoon at the elementary school, and 7:45 in the morning to 3:20 in the afternoon at the secondary school. 3:10 and 3:20 correspond with when buses are pulling out, so that's kind of how we're defining instructional day. So with that, this body.
So is that gonna sunset?
So right now.
Off the governor's order on the on the 8th? And if so, can we say that we want the face masks off right now everywhere except what the governor has said? And if it goes off at the governor's office on the 8th, we go off too.
Yep.
Fair enough?
Yep, so what we could do is, there could be a motion that would rescind policy 808 in compliance with either an executive order or July 1. July 1 is when the governor has already issued executive order 2121 that eliminates face covering statewide. There's also stipulations in place that if certain vaccination percents were reached, then that elimination statewide would go into effect as well. So the easiest thing to do would be to just introduce a motion to rescind this policy and effective either July 1 or as soon as the governor's executive order would allow. That would be the easiest way to do it. Right now, what's in place is we are required in all schools, public, private, kindergarten through 12th grade schools, are required to have face masks during instructional time only.
Is that what our policy says right now? Or do we have to modify the policy to say what you just said?
No, that's what the policy says because Executive Order 21-21 modified previous executive orders.
So what you're looking for is for us to decide if we want to just sunset this thing.
Do you want to sunset it when the governor says the face mask thing is completely done? Then this is done? Or do you want to keep policy 808 in place in case the board wants to, at some point, have that be something that we are going to implement in the future?
I'd make a motion that we follow what the governor wants. And if he says it's sunset, we're done.
So the motion would be to rescind policy 808 effective July 1 or at an earlier date approved by governor's executive order. Perfect.
I got a motion from Bruce,
I'll second.
a second from Maggie. Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to ask, I feel like I'm speaking too much.
No, we're moving right along, Bruce. I
I have a quick question for
Okay.
pause though, so is that considered instructional or a pause now can?
So 7:45 to 3:10 at the
I just wanted to
elementary.
make sure it wasn't considered,
Yep. So if a family were to use pause at 6:30 in the morning,
they can, okay,
they can bring their child in. That child doesn't have to have a mask on at 7:45.
they have to.
We are saying our instructional day starts and they would need to have a mask. And then at 3:10, those students that are in pause would be able to take those off.
Is it the same way for outside too or no? Like for tomorrow for track and field day?
Outside, they will not have their mask on, correct?
All right, so I had the motion from Bruce, second from Maggie. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Carried. H, unrequested leave of absence.
All right, so I am asking the board to rescind the proposed unrequested leave of absence for Amy Jo Gaby that was approved at the last board meeting. Amy Jo's assignment for the coming year would be 0.5 ELL and 0.5 remote learning facilitator is what her assignment would be.
So move.
I have a motion from Bruce,
I'll second.
a second from Jake. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. It's carried. School board committee assignments.
Miranda, can you just put that Vanderpool made the motion, not Pearson, on H?
Oh, yep.
Oh, I thought Christian, sorry.
No.
Thank you. Committee assignments. So the committee assignment sheet is provided with Ashley's resignation this evening. There are 4 committee assignments that the board should consider. Right now, Ashley serves on the Continuing Education Committee. She serves on the Community Education Advisory Committee. She serves on the Paraprofessional and Support Staff Negotiations Committee, and she serves on the Meet and Confer Committee. So we should probably come up with coverage for those. So continuing ed and,
We just shout out if we want some.
Yeah, I think
I'll
that's.
take a community ed one if that works.
so Rick Kane did email me today. He's interested in community ed as
Oh,
well.
then I'm good. I'll do something else if you need me to fill in.
Yep.
I can take continuing education. I was alternate on there anyway.
Okay, and Thomas, you were alternate on community ed.
Yep.
Do you want community ed or are you fine with?
I'm fine with Rick taking, yeah, that's wonderful.
Then you're gonna have a-
I can remain as alternate, I'm his backup.
All right,
That is wonderful.
so Rick will take community ed. Cheryl, you'll take continuing ed.
Yep.
Perfect. Paraprofessional negotiations and support staff negotiations.
I can take that one.
Okay,
That would be good.
and then Maggie, you're down as an alternate for
I
me to
can-
confer.
Take that.
Okay. Can you make notes of those, Miranda? So it would be Cheryl for continuing ed, Rick for community ed, Jake for the negotiations, and Maggie for meet and confer. We'll get an updated list of committee assignments out to everybody as soon as we make those modifications.
And then, to kind of have further discussion, and we can discuss this more, I guess, at our next meeting, but, our current intent will be to discuss at our next meeting, you know, what we want to do as far as, you know, naming a replacement for Ashley. I think we can have a bigger discussion at that meeting, and kind of start working through a game plan of what we want that to look like and how we want to pursue with that. So if anybody's got questions on that, feel free to ask myself or Matt. But we've had a lot of discussion on it, and I think that'd be the best course of action is just to start talking about it at our next board meeting.
Good.
Can we get a motion for these committee
Yep.
assignment changes?
So look for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Cheryl. And I will second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Adult basic education, Glacial Lakes.
So this is an annual membership. Basically, we are in a consortium for adult basic ed. Adult basic ed is funded by the state because of our size, rather than just running adult basic ed as a standalone entity at Paynesville area schools. We partner with 9 other school districts and we form this Glacial Lakes Adult Basic Ed Consortium. The consortium gets the funding. Then we just have to provide our services. We submit our service bill to the consortium and they reimburse us for the actual costs of services that we provide. I would highly recommend that we continue to access that funding and we continue to be a part of the Glacial Lake Consortium.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the Glacial Lakes Adult Basic Education Agreement as.
Say that 5 times.
I couldn't say consortium once.
I'll make a motion.
And Maggie's got the motion,
I'll second.
and a second from Cheryl. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Environmental Occupational Health and Safety Contract.
So this is a contract with Resource Training and Solution for the next 2 school years, 2021-22 and then 22-23. They would provide our environmental occupational health and safety services. So for instance, like our mock OSHA inspection would come out and perform for us. They would also do our asbestos inspection and reporting. They would come out and do that. All of our MSDS chemical inventorying in our cleaning closets and things like that. They would come out and they would be our provider for all of those. Any occupational services that we really need to be able to stay on top of and provide for safety of our employees, Resource Training and Solutions would be the ones who would provide the experts to be able to have us carry those out. Total cost of the contract is $10,843.43. Again, that's for the next 2 years. So it comes down to roughly about $5,420 per year. Very close to what we are currently paying this year. It's pretty much about the same dollar amount.
Looking for a motion to approve the contract with Environmental Health, Occupational Health and Safety Contract with Resource Training and Solutions.
I so move.
A motion from Jake,
I'll second
a
it.
second from Bruce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Softball, football, track facility update.
So again, that, a piece of this is what's sitting at your table with, Project 3. is there. But then I just want to get this information to the board. So since BCI has been out, and I think they have done a absolutely excellent job, they've been great to work with on the large project. And I'm really happy to say they're ahead of schedule, and I think everybody's gonna be really pleased with the outcome of that. So I did engage them in just wanting to get kind of a second set of eyes on what we've been talking about doing with our softball fields, with potentially recrowning the football field, and then with resurfacing our track. So they put together a narrative and a scope of work and narrative, and you can certainly read through all that. And then they also put together a draft budget. The draft budget, as you can see on the handout I gave you, from where kind of things were to where BCI thinks they are, their budget actually is going down, which I don't see that very often, so I was pretty impressed. So their BCI is really making a push to become more involved in K-12 projects. They are actually working a lot with Ricori on their activities, campus as well and stuff. So I just wanted to get this for you. It's more just for your information. There's nothing that we're gonna do with it here tonight. But I think as we start finalizing what project 2 looks like and what that financing looks like, I think then the next focus is gonna become providing clarity with project 3. And so both of these documents are really just there for you guys to be able to take a peek at and start looking at what potentially we're looking at with scope of work and costs. Questions at all on any of that material?
No questions, I guess, put a thank you to BCI for putting this information together for us, so we have something to look at. It's, you don't have to tell them that they came in that much farther underneath our budget, right? So.
They know, they know.
Okay.
We've been talking and
All right,
stuff.
well.
And actually, the nice thing about it is they actually think they can do maybe even a little bit better than what's on there. So I think, yeah, it's a good piece of information to at least start a conversation.
It changes that quite a bit, the lower numbers. It looks like a completely different picture.
Yep.
All right, upcoming meetings. I don't think we've seen a list this long for upcoming meetings in the 3 years.
I'm just gonna.
Well, and I
Spread the
apologize
room
to the board. I was very short-sighted in not recognizing what you guys are all going through with the superintendent process and stuff, so my apologies on that. With that, we are gonna do one last negotiation meeting, but then we're gonna pause negotiations because there's plenty on people's plates. So I'm gonna just run through these. If I miss something, let me know. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., paraprofessional negotiations will be in this room. Thursday, the 27th at 9:30 a.m. at Schools for Equity and Education meeting, their last one of the year. Usually it's a legislative wrap up, but there's nothing to wrap up yet, so we'll see what content they have. Wednesday, June 2nd at 4:30, we'll have our food service negotiation team here. Monday, June 7th at 7:30 a.m., we'll do custodial negotiations in this room. And then Monday, June 7th at 2 p.m., we'll do teacher negotiations as well. Tuesday, June 8th, that's our work session for June, 6 p.m. in this room. Tuesday, June 15th is the special meeting at 6 p.m. Where School Exec Connect will be back out to present the slate of candidates. June 16th at 2 p.m., that would be the first set of superintendent interviews. Friday, June 18th would be the second set at 2 p.m. June 21st, 4:45 p.m. would be the first finalist interview. Tuesday, June 22nd at 6 p.m., that's our regular business meeting in June. And then Wednesday, June 23rd, 4:45 p.m. would be the second finalist interview. And Thursday, June 24th at 4:45 would be the third one if that's what the board chooses to interview as 3 finalists. So these are the meetings will get posted.
The culture and climate, is that considered a committee meeting or a conversation?
Conversation, yep. Okay,
Anybody see anything missing or questions on that?
Okay,
anything we need?
I think we should get together a few more times.
oh boy.
Last hurrah with Matt, he's making it real in June. All right, if not, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Moving forward to now adjourn.
Motion from Jake, second from Cheryl. Any further discussions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll say no. Carried.